I'll never forget the night those instant noodles became the best meal of my life. It was the end of a long, punishing day, one of those hikes that looks innocent on the map, but turns out to be nothing but climbs and switchbacks. The sun had burned hot all afternoon, and by the time we stumbled into camp, every muscle in my legs throbbed like it had its own heartbeat. My buddy Nate dropped his pack with a groan, and just lay flat on the ground, staring at the sky as if it might offer mercy. I didn't say a word. I didn't have the breath for it. We were somewhere deep in the Adirondacks, miles from the car, miles from anything really. Just a small clearing beside a creek that whispered through the stones like it was mocking our exhaustion. The air was cooling fast, that crisp alpine chill that always makes food smell better and fires burn sweeter. We built the campfire in silence, each motion slow, deliberate, almost meditative. The first crackle of the tinder catching felt like victory. When that smoke rose and the flames began to glow orange against the encroaching blue of dusk, it was as if the forest exhaled along with us. I rummaged through my pack, past the dented can of beans, the last 2 marshmallows, and a squash chocolate bar, until I found the prize, a packet of instant noodles, chicken flavour. The kind you buy in bulk for 50 cents and swear tastes like cardboard, until you're in the woods. Nate chuckled when he saw it. "That's dinner," he said, his voice half a croak. I nodded solemnly. "Only the finest cuisine," I replied, tearing open the packet like it was a sacred offering. We boiled creek water in the small metal pot, the steam rising in little ghosts that smelled faintly of pine. When I poured in the noodles, the aroma of cheap seasoning filled the air, and we both groaned in delight. It wasn't just hunger, it was something deeper, primal almost, that made that smell feel like home. When it was ready, we ate straight from the pot, passing it back and forth like a shared secret. The noodles were overcooked and slightly smoky from the fire, but I swear they tasted like heaven. Every bite brought warmth back into my body, pushed away the ache, and made the night settle softer around us. We didn't talk. Nate, tucked deep in my sleeping bag, listening to the distant gurgle of the creek and the faint hiss of the coals still alive under their thin blanket of ash. My stomach rumbled, and I laughed quietly to myself, still thinking about those noodles. You'd think after a meal that simple, I'd wake up craving bacon and eggs or a stack of pancakes. But no. My mind went straight back to that salty broth and the way it had chased the fatigue from my bones. When Nate finally stirred, he looked like a man halfway between dream and regret. His beard was damp with dew, and his hair stuck up in every possible direction. "You make coffee?" he muttered. I held up our dented tin mug, already half full of creek water and instant grounds swirling at the bottom. "Luxury service," I said. He grunted approval, then sat cross-legged beside the dying fire, hands out to catch what little warmth remained. We didn't have much left for breakfast, just a couple of granola bars and a single can of beans. The can was dented, scratched, the label long gone, but it was our only real food until we hiked out. I jabbed it open with my knife, and the smell that came out, earthy, smoky, a little metallic, was weirdly comforting. We set it on the coals to warm, watching the tiny bubbles rise at the edges. As the steam thickened, it mixed with the scent of pine needles and damp soil. There's something about food cooking outdoors that changes it. Maybe it's the hunger that sharpens your senses, or maybe the smoke just finds a way into everything, turning even canned beans into something worth remembering. We ate straight from the can, alternating bites, joking that we'd opened a fine vintage. Bean à la smoke, aged 3 nights in the back of the pack. Each spoonful felt like it restored a bit of life. Around us, the forest woke up. The slow chatter of chickadees, the far-off knock of a woodpecker, and the whisper of the creek, swollen with last night's dew. Everything smelled clean, bright, alive. I think that's when it hit me. Nothing in the world tastes better than food you've truly earned. When your muscles ache, when you've worked slick from last night's dew. We hiked mostly in silence, the kind of quiet that only comes when two people have said everything that needs saying. Every now and then, Nate would let out a low whistle, just to break the rhythm of our footsteps, or to spook off whatever animals might be watching from the brush. The air had warmed, carrying that rich, loamy smell of wet earth and pine sap, and our clothes clung to us with the kind of sweat that only real work brings. When we finally reached the ridge, the world opened up in a way that made all the struggle worth it. Rolling hills tumbling into blue distance, the kind of view that humbles you right down to your boots. We decided to stop there for lunch. "You know what?" Nate said, dropping his pack. "I think we earned dessert." He grinned and pulled from the top of his bag a half-crushed pack of marshmallows, a sleeve of graham crackers, and 2 chocolate bars that looked like they'd been through a war. "S'mores?" he asked. I laughed. "You're a genius." We built a small fire from what dry wood we could find and crouched close to it, letting the smoke curl around us. The first marshmallow was a disaster. Charred black, molten sugar dripping onto my fingers. I ate it anyway. The second came out golden, puffed just right, melting into the chocolate like it was born to be there. We didn't rush it. Each s'more was its own little celebration, a slow ritual of flame and sweetness. The graham crackers were cracked and the chocolate a little gritty, but it didn't matter. Sitting there on that ridge, watching clouds drift like lazy ships across the sky, it was a feast fit for kings. The fire popped. A breeze rustled the branches overhead, and for a moment, there was no past or future, just that perfect, smoky sweetness lingering in the air. I looked over at Nate, who was licking chocolate off his fingers, eyes half closed in quiet satisfaction. "You ever notice," I said, "how food tastes different out here?" He nodded slowly, smiling without looking up. "Yeah, out here, you actually taste it." We sat there for a long while, letting the afternoon fade into gold, the warmth of the fire mixing with the chill of the mountain breeze. Caked in mud, our shoulders sore from the weight of our packs, but every ache felt earned. Nate dropped his gear beside a fallen log and sighed. "You know," he said, "if heaven smells like this, I'll never complain again." He wasn't wrong. The air was thick with pine, wood smoke, and that faint sweetness of grass warming under the last rays of sun. We pitched the tent in record time, our movements automatic now, practiced from days of routine. I knelt by the fire pit and struck a match, watching the flame catch on the birch bark and bloom into orange life. There's something mesmerizing about that moment when fire takes hold. It's like you can feel the world leaning closer, drawn by the light. Nate unpacked the last of our provisions, and we both laughed at the pitiful sight. Half a pack of noodles, a scrap of beef jerky, and a single can of beans. "5-star dining," I said, and he raised his hands in mock reverence. "Chef's choice tonight." We mixed the noodles with bits of jerky and beans, letting it all simmer together in the blackened pot until it turned into a bubbling, fragrant mess. The smell rose into the cool air, smoky, savoury, rich in that way only campfire meals can be. We sat side by side, cross-legged by the fire, eating straight from the pot again. Each bite was a revelation. Salt and smoke, meat and starch, hunger and satisfaction all rolled into one. We didn't bother with conversation. Words would have only dulled the moment. The world around us had gone still except for the crackle of burning wood and the distant call of a whippoorwill echoing through the trees. As the stars came out, the fire cast a soft glow over our little clearing, painting our faces in flickering light. Nate leaned back on his elbows, staring at the sky. "You think people know what they're missing?" he asked. Back home, eating microwave dinners in front of their TVs. I shrugged, scooping another spoonful. Maybe not, but that's all right. Let 'em think this stuff is just beans and noodles. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. Yeah, their loss. We ate until the pot was empty, scraped, unzipped the flap, and stepped out into the hush of morning. Mist hovered low over the meadow, and the creek sparkled like it had been dusted with diamonds. Nate was already up, crouched by the ashes, stirring them lazily with a stick. He handed me a tin mug filled with hot water and a few leftover coffee grounds floating on top. Gourmet brew, he said with a grin. We didn't speak for a long time. There was no need to. The forest did the talking for us. The trickle of the creek, the distant call of a loon, the steady rhythm of the world waking up. My stomach was still full from the night before, but it wasn't just the food that filled me. It was the satisfaction, the calm that settles in after you've pushed yourself and found that you can endure more than you thought. Funny thing about those noodles and beans and s'mores. They weren't just meals anymore. They'd become markers in memory. Pieces of a story stitched together with hunger, laughter, and the kind of tired joy that can't be bottled or bought. When we packed up camp, I caught myself lingering, my eyes tracing the spot where our fire had been. Just ashes now, scattered grey against the dirt. Yet I knew I'd remember that fire, the glow on our faces, the sound of Nate's laughter, the simple pleasure of scraping the last bit of food from a shared pot. Out here, everything was stripped down to the essentials. No distractions. No noise. Just the truth of how small we really are. And how big the world feels when you finally stop trying to control it. We hiked out slow. Our packs lighter somehow, though we hadn't lost much weight. Every step was easy. Every breath deep and steady. As we reached the trailhead, Nate turned back the one last look at the ridge behind us. You think dinner back home will ever taste the same? He asked. I shook my head. Not a chance. He smiled. That tired, content smile that only comes from being completely spent.